In your Wayland lecture, you talk quite a bit about how food, trade in food, and the Green Revolution have increased food insecurity, while at the same time increasing food production. And there's been more discussion lately about food insecurity in developed countries, even though obesity rates are at record levels. I was wondering if you could comment on the interplay between food abundance and yet insecurity in developed countries.
Well, the way to understand this is to see for whom the food system works. And if you look at the food system, if you imagine it as sort of bottleneck, so wide at the top and narrow in the middle and wide at the bottom, and you have millions of farmers around the world who are growing food, and 7 billion of us now who eat every day if we can. And so millions of farmers, billions of people, billions of consumers. But at the middle, there's just a few corporations that run the global food system. And that means that you've got a situation where those corporations are doing what corporations always do. They buy cheap and they sell dear. So they're looking to pay as little as possible for the food that they then process and turn into profitable commodities for us to consume. So at the end of the efflorescence of hunger that we see in the world today, there are 1 billion people now who are undernourished. That's to say that there are people living on roughly 1,700 calories a day or less. 1 billion of those people, and many of them, in fact the majority of them, are in rural areas, often involved in agriculture. And that's no accident. It's the way the system is set up, systematically underpays people involved in agriculture, particularly farm laborers, and people, and particularly women involved in the food system. And that's why we have 60% of people going hungry today are women or girls. And on the other end, we see in developed countries, in the global north, we see that simultaneously a great deal of obesity. And that's, again, no accident. The corporations that produce the food that we eat in this country are in it for the money. They're corporations. They're chartered to make money. That's their job. And so they're interested in selling things that are profitable, and that means processed, and that means the sorts of things our bodies are wired for, things that historically, in human evolution used to be very scarce. So things like salt and fat and sugar. And it just turns out that of course, these very profitable commodities are ones that are absolutely the ones that are responsible for the rise in the level of obesity. So that explains sort of the global picture. Now, in the global north, there aren't that many people living on less than 1,700 calories a day. But what you do have is food insecurity. You have people who are poor. And if you're poor, and the way we distribute food in the global north in large part is through the market, then if you are poor and the market price is above what you can afford, then you skip a meal. And this recession has had the effect of driving 50 million Americans, for example, since I live in the United States. These are the figures I'm most familiar with. In the United States, 50 million Americans are now food insecure. And again, that's not surprising. When we distribute food through the market and when we have an assault on the entitlements that, in the welfare state, patchy though it always was in the United States, when that's undermined, then you have simultaneously the rise of obesity. So the United States is now the most obese country on earth and is scheduled to be, by 2030, most Americans will be not only overweight but obese. And also at the same time, the possibility of a lot of people skipping meals and not knowing where their next meal is coming from, and 1 in 5 children experiencing hunger in the United States. And again, that's the way. Those are the rules of the game when the way we distribute food is through the market.